Ava Lancaster sat frozen in her car, staring through the restaurant window. There he was, Gabriel, her husband, laughing, smiling, touching another woman. She watched as Camille Monroe, the young, beautiful doctor from his hospital, reached across the table and took his hand. Gabrielle didn't pull away. Instead, he placed his other hand on her stomach, tender, possessive. Ava's chest tightened. Camille was pregnant. Her vision blurred, but she refused to cry. Not here, not now. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. She could walk in, call him out, make a scene, let the entire restaurant see the lies, the betrayal. But as she gripped the steering wheel, a cold clarity settled over her. No, that would be too easy. Gabriel thought he could cheat, lie, and move on without consequences. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Ava took a slow breath and exhaled. She wouldn't confront him tonight. But soon, he'd regret ever underestimating her. Ava Lancaster had always believed in the life she and Gabriel built together. They were the kind of couple others admired, a power duo in the medical world, both highly respected in their fields. Gabriel Hunt was a celebrated oncologist, hailed as a life-saving genius, while Ava had carved her own name as one of the best cardiac surgeons in the state. Together, they were untouchable. Their love had once been real. She knew it, felt it in the way Gabriel used to look at her, in the way he used to reach for her hand even in the busiest corridors of the hospital. They had been partners in every sense of the word, supporting each other's careers, understanding the weight of their responsibilities, navigating the pressure of their demanding jobs. For years, their lives had been filled with late-night conversations over takeout, stolen kisses between shifts, and a deep mutual respect that bound them together even when everything else felt chaotic. Gabriel had been her best friend, her confidant, her home. But now, Ava wasn't so sure she knew the man lying next to her every night. It had started subtly, a shift in the way he spoke to her, in the way he touched her. Gabriel became distant, always claiming exhaustion or work stress whenever Ava reached for him. The warmth in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a cold detachment she couldn't ignore. At first, she told herself it was just a phase. Their work demanded long hours. They were both exhausted. Maybe he was simply overwhelmed. But then, there were the nights he didn't come home, the unexplained absences, the excuses that never quite made sense. Emergency surgery, he'd say, brushing her off as he grabbed his coat and left. But why did it always happen at the most convenient times? On nights when Ava had an unexpected evening off? On weekends they were supposed to spend together? Then came the text messages. Brief, secretive. She had caught glimpses of them when his phone buzzed at odd hours. Gabriel was careful, but not careful enough. Once, she had seen a message flash across his screen. "I miss you. Can't wait to see you tonight." Her stomach had twisted into knots. When she confronted him, he had simply laughed, brushing it off as a patient being overly familiar. "You know how emotional some of them get, Ava." And because she wanted to believe him, because she wanted to believe in their marriage, she let it go. But the signs kept piling up. She had smelled an unfamiliar perfume on his shirts more than once, a scent too floral, too feminine to be from the sterile halls of the hospital. When she mentioned it, he had smirked, acting amused. "You think I'm having an affair because of a perfume? That's ridiculous, Ava." She had laughed with him then, forcing herself to believe it was nothing. But the feeling never left. And then, there was Camille Monroe. Ava had never felt threatened by her before. Camille was younger, ambitious, charming in a way that made her the center of attention without even trying. As a respected OB-GYN, she had made a name for herself quickly, and her reputation as a rising star in the hospital only fueled her confidence. Ava had worked alongside Camille for years. She had seen the way the woman carried herself, how she flirted effortlessly with her male colleagues, how she played up her charm when it suited her. But she had never once suspected Camille would be a threat to her marriage, not until Gabriel started spending more and more time with her. It was gradual at first. Small moments that didn't seem like much on their own, but together, they painted an entirely different picture. The extra-long lunch breaks, the whispers in the hallway, The nights Gabriel came home smelling faintly of something floral, something familiar. And then, the final confirmation. The way Camille's name came up a little too often in casual conversation. Camille and I had an interesting case today. Camille thinks we should present this at the next conference. Camille is incredibly talented. You'd like her if you got to know her better. Ava had smiled through it all, pretending not to notice the shift, pretending not to feel the cold dread creeping up her spine. But deep down, she knew. She just wasn't ready to face it yet. And that was the cruelest part. Watching it happen in slow motion, feeling her marriage slip through her fingers while her husband acted as if nothing had changed. She tried to hold on, to pretend that everything was fine. But pretending wasn't enough, because, in the end, a perfect marriage meant nothing if it was built on lies. Ava Lancaster had spent years building her career, earning the respect of her colleagues, and dedicating herself to the hospital. When she was promoted to head of cardiothoracic surgery, it should have been a moment of celebration. It should have been a milestone she and Gabriel toasted to over dinner, reminiscing about their journey together. But Gabriel hadn't even come home that night. "Late surgery," he had texted. "We'll celebrate soon, I promise." She had wanted to believe him, but deep down she knew better. Gabriel's absence had become routine, his excuses predictable. And now, with her new role, he had even more freedom to slip away. Ava's promotion meant she was no longer working the same rotations as Gabriel. Their schedules barely aligned, leaving him and Camille Monroe free to move unchecked. The once rare lunch meetings between them became frequent. The late-night research sessions turned into overnights. There were whispered conversations, knowing glances in the hallways, and yet every time Ava tried to bring it up, Gabriel dismissed her with a charming smile and a well-practiced excuse. "It's just work, Ava. You're being paranoid." Camille is a colleague, nothing more. But she wasn't paranoid. The hospital walls had eyes, and Ava could feel them watching her. Nurses who once greeted her warmly now averted their gaze. Conversations hushed when she walked by. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than words, a silence that carried a truth no one dared say aloud. One afternoon, as she stood by the nurses' station, she overheard a conversation just as it was cut short. "Did you hear? He and Dr. Monroe were seen." The moment they spotted her, the room went still. The two nurses exchanged awkward glances before one of them fumbled with a clipboard, pretending to be engrossed in patient files. Ava stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "What were you saying?" A forced smile. "Nothing, Dr. Lancaster." She knew it wasn't nothing. She knew they were talking about Gabriel. The weight of it all pressed down on her. She had spent years in this hospital, earning the trust and admiration of her peers, and now she was the pitiful wife everyone whispered about. She told herself she was imagining things, that maybe she was reading too much into every little detail. But that fragile hope shattered one evening when she returned to the hospital late. She had forgotten a case file in her office, nothing unusual. The halls were mostly empty, the soft hum of fluorescent lights buzzing above. As she stepped into the dimly lit parking garage, a familiar voice stopped her in her tracks. "Gabriel." She turned toward the sound, instinctively stepping behind a pillar. And then she saw them. Gabriel and Camille stood by his car, illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby street lamp. Their heads were close together, whispering. Camille laughed, tilting her head back slightly, and then she placed her hand on his chest. Not in a casual, friendly way, it was intimate, possessive. Ava's stomach twisted as she watched Gabriel do nothing. He didn't move away. He didn't step back. He simply let her touch him. Camille ran her fingers lightly over his shirt, dragging them down just enough to feel the warmth of his body. And Gabriel, her husband, stood there, allowing it. Ava's throat tightened. She wanted to believe she was misunderstanding, that there was some reasonable explanation, but there wasn't. This wasn't just work. This was something else. She clenched her fists, willing herself to step forward to demand answers, but instead she just stood there, frozen. Maybe I'm overreacting, maybe this isn't what it looks like. The lies she told herself were bitter on her tongue. But as she watched Camille press closer, whispering something against Gabriel's ear, she knew. Her marriage wasn't just cracking, it was already breaking. Ava could no longer convince herself that she was imagining things. Ever since that night in the parking lot, when she had seen Camille's hand resting on Gabriel's chest, when she had seen him let her, the doubts that had once lingered in the shadows of her mind now screamed at her in broad daylight. Gabriel was slipping away. Their home, once filled with conversation and easy laughter, had become a hollow space of avoidance and silence. Dinner together became a rare occurrence. When Ava did manage to get Gabriel to sit at the same table, he barely acknowledged her presence. His phone buzzed constantly, and each time he would glance at the screen before flipping it over, hiding the messages from her view. "Emergency case," he would mutter, standing up, already halfway out the door. Ava had stopped asking him to stay. She had stopped waiting up for him because she already knew where he was. She started looking for proof. Not because she needed it for herself, but because a small, desperate part of her hoped she would find nothing. That she was wrong. That this was just paranoia. But the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. Her first discovery was in their bank account. Gabriel had always been generous, but now there were transactions she couldn't explain. Expensive dinners at upscale restaurants, jewelry stores, designer boutiques. Ava scrolled through the charges with a sick feeling in her stomach. She hadn't received a single gift in months. Then there was the hotel receipt. It arrived in the mail one afternoon, addressed to Gabriel, but Ava opened it without hesitation. A luxury suite at the Grand Sterling Hotel, booked for a night he had sworn he was on call at the hospital. She stared at the paper, her hands tightening around the edges. And then, as if the universe wanted to mock her, she found the lipstick stain. A faint smudge of deep red right at the collar of Gabriel's white dress shirt, a color Ava never wore. She could almost hear his voice in her head already dismissing her concerns. "It's just from a patient, Ava. You're overreacting." But this wasn't overreacting. This was evidence. That night she waited for him in the kitchen, the hotel receipt clenched in her fingers. The clock ticked past midnight, then 1, then 2. When Gabriel finally walked through the door, he didn't even look surprised to see her. He was used to disappointing her now. Ava placed the paper on the table between them. "Do you want to explain this to me?" Gabriel barely spared it a glance before sighing, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Jesus, Ava, are you really going through my things now? You told me you were at the hospital. I was. Then why do I have a hotel bill with your name on it?" For the first time in weeks, Gabriel looked her in the eye. But instead of guilt, there was annoyance. "I had a meeting. A private donor, someone considering making a large contribution to the hospital's research fund. It was confidential." Ava swallowed back the anger rising in her throat. "And the perfume on your clothes? The late nights? The messages you hide from me? Are those confidential too?" Gabriel laughed, a short, infuriating sound. "You sound insane." "No, Gabriel. I sound like a wife whose husband is lying to her." His expression darkened, the frustration slipping into something colder. "You're paranoid. You don't trust me. And frankly, I'm sick of this conversation." With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Ava standing in the kitchen, the hotel receipt still clenched in her shaking hands. She didn't go after him. Because what was left to say? The next day, the whispers at the hospital grew louder. Ava had always commanded respect among her colleagues, but now she could feel the shift, the pity in their eyes, the hesitation in their voices when they spoke to her. Gabriel and Camille were no longer being careful. They didn't need to be. They arrived at conferences together, sat too close during hospital board meetings. Camille's hand lingered on his arm just a second too long. And Ava? She was the fool standing in the middle of it all, watching as her world collapsed around her. For the first time in her life, she had no idea how to fix it. Ava had endured enough. For weeks, she had tried to hold on, tried to rationalize, tried to convince herself that she could salvage something from the wreckage of her marriage. But that night, as she sat alone at their dinner table, staring at the untouched plate in front of her, she felt something inside her shift. Gabriel had told her he was meeting with a critical patient, another late-night emergency, Another excuse. Except this time, Ava didn't just accept it. Her fingers trembled only slightly as she opened the tracking app on her phone. She had never thought she would stoop to this, but desperation had a way of erasing boundaries. The screen showed exactly what she suspected. Gabriel wasn't at the hospital. He was at Le Vieux Chateau, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Ava felt the air leave her lungs, but she didn't allow herself the luxury of breaking down. Instead, she grabbed her coat and walked out the door. The drive to the restaurant felt endless, her knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. She wasn't even sure what she would do when she got there. Confront him? Make a scene? Demand answers? But when she finally arrived and stepped through the grand entrance, all thoughts of restraint vanished. Through the soft glow of the restaurant's dim lighting, there he was. Gabriel sat at an intimate corner table, his hand resting lightly on Camille Monroe's stomach. Ava stopped breathing. Camille laughed, tilting her head toward him, whispering something only he could hear. Gabriel leaned in closer, his expression softer than it had been in months, a look of tenderness, of possession. And then Ava saw it, the small curve of Camille's belly. Her mind went blank. Camille was pregnant, Gabriel's child. Ava felt the world tilt beneath her feet. He hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been building a new life, one that didn't include her. Something cold and sharp settled inside her. She refused to break. So she did what she had never done before. She walked straight to their table. The moment Camille saw her, the woman's smile faltered. Her fingers tensed slightly where they rested on the tablecloth, but she didn't pull away from Gabriel. Gabriel, however, didn't look surprised. He exhaled slowly, then leaned back in his chair, his lips curling into something that resembled amusement. "Ava," he said, as if this were all inevitable. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." Ava's nails dug into her palms, but she willed herself to stay calm. She would not give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Camille placed a delicate hand on her stomach as if flaunting her victory. "We weren't planning on telling you this way," Camille said, voice smooth, dripping with false sympathy. "But I suppose you deserve to know. Gabriel and I are having a baby." Ava's entire body turned to ice, not from pain, from rage. The betrayal was complete now, spoken aloud, woven into reality with no room left for denial. Ava could have slapped Camille. She could have grabbed the glass of wine from the table and thrown it in Gabriel's face. But instead, she smiled. "Congratulations," she said, her voice steady, controlled. Gabriel's smirk faltered just for a fraction of a second. He had expected fireworks, a breakdown, a scene. He had expected Ava to crumble. But she wouldn't give him that. She wouldn't give either of them that. She turned on her heel and walked away, feeling their eyes on her as she left. Gabriel might have thought this was the end, but Ava knew better. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Instead, she started planning. Gabriel and Camille believed they had won, that Ava would simply fade away, humiliated, discarded. But they were wrong. Ava would not go down quietly. She would gather her evidence. She would collect every piece of dirt, every secret Gabriel had tried to bury. She would make sure that when he fell, he would fall hard. He thought he was untouchable, that she was just the abandoned wife, too broken to fight back. But soon, he would learn the truth. Gabriel Hunt had underestimated her, and he would regret it. Ava barely slept after the confrontation at the restaurant. The image of Gabriel's hand resting on Camille's pregnant belly replayed in her mind like a cruel loop, a reminder of just how completely he had discarded her. The betrayal had settled deep inside her bones, but more than the pain, there was purpose. She wasn't going to fall apart. She wasn't going to let him win. The next morning, she arrived at the hospital earlier than usual, determined to act as if nothing had changed. She knew people were watching her, whispering behind her back, avoiding her gaze, pitying her, but she refused to acknowledge it. Gabriel, ever the master manipulator, acted as if their confrontation had never happened. He moved through the hospital halls with his usual confidence, greeting colleagues, charming nurses, putting on the show of the devoted doctor and devoted husband. If anything, he was more attentive, stopping by her office, asking about her schedule, pretending to care. It was sickening. Ava played along, forcing herself to smile, to nod at the right moments, all while her mind worked furiously. Gabriel wanted her to accept her place, to stay quiet and fade into the background while he built a new life with Camille. But Ava had no intention of staying quiet. That same day, something happened that sent a chill down her spine. A nurse rushed into the staff lounge, speaking in hushed, urgent tones to another doctor. Ava caught only fragments. Something about a young patient, an unexpected death, a family demanding answers. Curious, she glanced at the patient log, and there it was. Ethan Carter, 14 years old. Ava's heart clenched. She had seen Ethan before, a bright, hopeful boy battling leukemia, responding well to treatment. His prognosis had been promising. There had been no indication that he was in immediate danger. Yet sometime during the night, he had died suddenly. The official report listed the cause as unexplained complications. Ava felt her stomach drop. The next thing she knew, she was standing in front of Lisa Carter, Ethan's mother. Lisa's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands shaking as she clutched a crumpled tissue. "They won't tell me what happened," Lisa choked out. "They just said it was unexpected. But I saw him last night, Dr. Lancaster. He was doing fine, he was laughing. He was supposed to come home next week. How does that turn into this?" Ava swallowed hard. "Did anyone from the hospital explain? Did they perform an autopsy?" Lisa shook her head violently. "Dr. Hunt told me it wasn't necessary. He said these things happen." Gabriel. Ava felt an icy dread settle over her. She promised Lisa she would look into it, then immediately accessed Ethan's medical records. Everything about his case felt too clean. The report was vague, hastily written with no detailed breakdown of what had led to his death. No tests, no secondary opinions, just a quick, neat conclusion that left no room for questions. And worse, Gabriel had signed off on everything. Ava leaned back, exhaling slowly. Ethan Carter wasn't the first. Ava had spent years watching Gabriel work. He was brilliant, meticulous. He didn't make mistakes. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this wasn't the first unexpected death he had handled. She dug deeper. Late that night, long after most of the hospital staff had gone home, she accessed the hospital's records, scrolling through every case Gabriel had overseen in the past 5 years. Patterns started to emerge. Too many patients with sudden, unexplained deaths. Too many of them had one thing in common: high-value life insurance policies. Each time, the money had been claimed almost immediately after their passing. The payouts were clean, unchallenged, and Gabriel had been involved in every single one. Ava's breath hitched. Her husband wasn't just a liar, he was a killer. Ava shut her laptop, her pulse hammering. Gabriel was careful, always careful. If she had noticed this, it meant he had slipped, and if he had slipped, that meant he was getting reckless. She wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal of their marriage or the realization that she had spent years sleeping next to a murderer. There was no turning back now. Ava knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was going to take Gabriel down. Ava had spent the past few weeks pretending she was still the devoted wife, the respected surgeon, the woman who hadn't just uncovered the horrifying truth about her husband. But every day as she walked through the hospital halls, as she passed Gabriel exchanging smiles with colleagues and shaking hands with hospital board members, the weight of what she knew pressed down on her like a vice. Gabriel wasn't just an unfaithful husband. He was a murderer. The truth was right in front of her, but it wasn't enough. If she wanted to bring him down, she needed more. She needed proof that no one could ignore. She knew exactly where to start. That afternoon, Ava sat across from FBI Special Agent Callahan, her hands clenched around the medical records she had gathered. The dimly lit office smelled of stale coffee, stacks of files littering the desk between them. Callahan had been investigating Gabriel for years. She could see it in the exhausted look in his eyes, in the way he barely reacted when she laid out her findings. "We've suspected Hunt for a while," he admitted, flipping through the documents. "We know he's been manipulating medical records, but knowing and proving it in court are two different things. Ava inhaled sharply. I have more than just suspicions. I have case after case of unexplained deaths under his care. Patients who were improving. Patients who should have walked out of that hospital but didn't. Callahan set the folder down, his gaze hard. If you're right, Ava, this isn't just about fraud. It's murder. And if he's willing to kill his own patients for money, you don't think he'd go after you? Ava met his stare without flinching. I don't scare easily, Agent Callahan. Then you're underestimating him. Callahan leaned forward. Hunt isn't just some doctor pulling an insurance scam. He's powerful. He has the hospital administration in his pocket. He knows the system better than anyone. If he thinks you're a threat, he won't hesitate to make you disappear. Ava's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to keep her voice steady. Then let's make sure he never gets the chance. The next step was clear. She needed to get closer to the money. Ava reached out to Lisa Carter again, the grieving mother who had been dismissed, ignored, and brushed aside. She met Lisa at a quiet cafe, her voice soft but urgent as she asked her to request a detailed breakdown of Ethan's life insurance policy. Lisa hesitated. I don't know if I can do this. Gabriel was so sure there was nothing suspicious about Ethan's death. Lisa, listen to me. Ava reached across the table, gripping her hand. I don't think Ethan's death was natural, and if I'm right, we need to stop this before it happens to someone else. Lisa wiped at her eyes and nodded. 2 days later, she called Ava in a panic. The money, it's gone. Ava's breath caught. What do you mean, gone? Ethan's life insurance payout. It was claimed the day after he died, but it wasn't me. I never even saw a check. Ava knew before Lisa even said it. Who was the recipient? The silence on the other end was heavy. Then, a company linked to Gabriel. Ava hung up and immediately called Callahan. We have it. The first undeniable crack in Gabriel's facade. But as soon as she had something real, Gabriel must have sensed it. It started small. Her office felt off. Things slightly moved from where she had left them. Then one morning she arrived to find her computer screen flickering, files missing from her locked cabinet. A single note sat on her desk. Walk away, Ava. You don't want this fight. She gritted her teeth. Oh, but she did. Gabriel, of course, acted oblivious, but she could feel it. The way he lingered just a little too long near her office. The way he smiled at her in the halls, all false concern and knowing glances. He wanted her to know that he was watching. Then came the flowers. A bouquet of white lilies, her least favorite flowers, waiting for her in the break room. No note, no card, just a silent message. It was Gabriel's way of taunting her, a reminder that he was always one step ahead. Ava refused to react. If he thought she would be intimidated, he was wrong. That night she took the final step. She slipped into Gabriel's office, a tiny recording device tucked inside her sleeve. Her heart pounded as she scanned the room, searching for a place where he wouldn't find it. Finally, she settled on the bookshelf, tucked between the heavy medical journals Gabriel never touched. The trap was set. All she had to do now was wait. Because Gabriel thought he was untouchable. He was about to learn how wrong he was. For months, Ava had been patient. She had gathered information, played the part of the oblivious wife, and carefully woven the net that would soon trap Gabriel. Now it was time to make her first move. She knew that Camille Monroe had no idea what kind of man she had entangled herself with. To Camille, Gabriel was the devoted lover, the soon-to-be father, the brilliant doctor whose career shone like a beacon. She was still lost in the fantasy that Ava had once believed in. But Ava was about to rip that illusion apart. She sent a single, unmarked envelope to Camille's office at the hospital. Inside, copies of financial transactions, insurance payouts, and medical records, each document carefully selected to raise questions. Ava didn't sign it. She didn't need to. She knew curiosity would do the rest. And she was right. The following evening, as Ava sat in the hospital lounge pretending to go over patient files, she saw Camille walk past with her phone clutched tightly in her hand, her normally confident stride now hesitant. Camille had taken the bait. The doubt had been planted. Now it was time to face Gabriel head-on. That night, she waited for him at home. It was a seemingly ordinary morning. The air smelled of coffee, the sun filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows over the polished hardwood floors. But everything about this moment was calculated. When Gabriel strolled into the kitchen, freshly showered, adjusting his cufflinks, Ava was already there. A thick manila folder sat on the counter between them. "Gabriel," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Gabriel barely glanced at the folder before smirking. "Are we really doing this? You've been sulking for months, Ava. Just say whatever it is you're dying to accuse me of." Ava said nothing. She simply opened the folder and slid the pages toward him. Gabriel's smirk wavered. He casually flipped through the first few pages, hospital records, insurance statements, until his eyes landed on the financial statements. Ava saw the exact moment he realized what he was looking at. His fingers tightened around the paper, his jaw clenched. And then, as if grasping at control, he laughed. "You've really gone all out, haven't you?" he said, shaking his head. "Digging through old files, trying to piece together some pathetic little conspiracy? What exactly are you hoping to accomplish, Ava? Are you trying to get back at me? Trying to make me feel guilty?" Ava folded her arms. She wasn't reacting. That was what unsettled him the most. "I just wanted to hear what you had to say," she said simply. Gabriel's confidence faltered, but only for a second. He slammed the folder shut and tossed it onto the counter. "You think you can ruin me with this? You think you can bring me down? Ava, you're a surgeon, you're not a prosecutor, you're not a cop. You're a woman scorned, and you're reaching—" His voice had risen, his composure beginning to crack. Ava picked up the folder, flipping to the last page. "You stole money from patients, Gabriel. You manipulated their treatments, dragged them through unnecessary procedures, and when it was convenient—" Her voice turned sharp. "They died." Gabriel's expression darkened. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I think I do." Gabriel took a step closer, his presence no longer charming but menacing. "Listen to me very carefully, Ava. You don't want to go down this road. You don't understand the forces at play here." Ava didn't flinch. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" she said softly. "You've spent so long getting away with it, you actually believe no one can stop you." Gabriel let out a dry, humorless laugh. "And who's going to stop me? You?" Ava tilted her head slightly, watching him. "No, Gabriel," she said, sliding the folder back into her hands. "I won't have to." For the first time, Gabriel's mask slipped entirely, a flicker of uncertainty because he knew Ava wasn't bluffing. He had underestimated her for too long, and now his carefully crafted empire was beginning to crack. But Gabriel still thought he could control the damage. He still believed he had the upper hand. What he didn't know was that Ava had already set the next stage of his downfall into motion. The fundraising gala at the hospital was coming up, the perfect stage, the perfect audience. And soon Gabriel Hunt would be exposed for exactly what he was. Ava had spent months gathering evidence, piecing together the dark secrets Gabriel had so carefully hidden. But now the time for subtlety was over. The walls were closing in on him, and he didn't even realize it yet. Every move she had made had led to this moment, the moment she would strike. She started with the people who had suffered most, the families of Gabriel's victims. Lisa Carter had already been on her side, but Ava knew she needed more. She needed every voice, every grieving parent, every widow who had been robbed not just of their loved ones, but of the truth. She met with them one by one. An elderly man, James Calloway, who had lost his wife after Gabriel prescribed the wrong medication. He had never questioned it at the time, trusting the hospital's explanation of unexpected complications. But now, as Ava laid out the pattern of deaths, his grief hardened into something else. "He killed her, didn't he?" James whispered, his voice shaking with rage. Ava didn't lie. "Yes, and we can stop him from doing it again." A young woman, Melissa Rayner, had lost her father under similar circumstances. What she hadn't known until now was that his life insurance had been cashed out the day after his death. Not by her, not by anyone in her family. Ava showed her the financial records. "Your father wasn't just another case to Gabriel. He was a paycheck." Melissa clutched the documents, tears brimming in her eyes, but her voice was firm. "Tell me what I need to do." By the end of the week, Ava had gathered a coalition of voices, families who had been silenced, ignored, and brushed aside. They weren't afraid anymore. They wanted justice. But justice wasn't enough. Gabriel needed to be humiliated. He needed to fall from grace in front of everyone who had ever respected him. Ava met with Agent Callahan, handing him the final pieces of evidence. "This is enough, isn't it?" she asked. Callahan nodded. "It's enough to build a case, but if you want him arrested immediately, we need a direct confession or a financial transaction that proves intent." Ava already knew exactly how to get it. She went straight to Gabriel. He was in his office, reviewing patient files, looking every bit the devoted doctor he pretended to be. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Gabriel didn't even glance up. "I assumed you were done throwing tantrums, Ava." "I was wrong about a lot of things," she said, her voice steady. "Maybe I was wrong about fighting you too." That made him pause. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Go on." Ava sighed, feigning exhaustion. "You were right. I can't win. I've been running myself in circles, trying to prove something that won't change anything. I don't want to be the bitter ex-wife. I don't want to waste my time chasing something that won't go anywhere." Gabriel smirked. Finally, some sense. Ava forced a small, hesitant smile. "I just need one thing from you, Gabriel." "And what's that?" She met his gaze, her voice soft. "The truth." Gabriel chuckled, shaking his head. "Ava, you can't handle the truth. Try me." He stood up, moving toward her, that same smug confidence radiating from him. "You want to know if I killed Ethan Carter?" he murmured. Ava held her breath. Gabriel leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Not everyone is strong enough to survive, Ava. Sometimes nature just needs a little help." Her heart pounded. The recorder was on. She had him. Ava pulled back, her mask of resignation still perfectly in place. "I see," she whispered. "I appreciate your honesty." Gabriel smirked. "I always told you, Ava, you can't fight me." But as she walked out of his office, she knew that was exactly what she was about to do. She handed the recorder to Callahan that night. "This is it. It's over." Callahan nodded. "We'll move forward with the warrant. But how do you want this to play out?" Ava didn't hesitate. "At the gala, in front of everyone." The hospital was hosting a fundraising gala, an annual event where donors, investors, and board members would gather to celebrate Gabriel's so-called medical achievements. It would be live-streamed, covered by press, attended by the most influential people in the industry, and it would be the stage of his downfall. Callahan hesitated. "Ava, if he suspects anything, he could disappear before we arrest him." "He won't suspect a thing," she said. "Gabriel doesn't believe he can lose." The plan was simple. Gabriel would be on stage, giving his grand speech. Ava would step forward, playing the role of the loyal, forgiving ex-wife, and then she would press play on the recording. The world would hear his confession. And as the audience erupted in chaos, FBI agents would step forward and take him away in handcuffs. The perfect, untouchable Gabriel Hunt would fall harder than he ever imagined. Over the next few days, Ava set everything in motion. She reached out to reporters, ensuring they had all the necessary information so that the story would break in full force. She contacted the families of Gabriel's victims, making sure they would be in the audience when everything unraveled. And, unbeknownst to Gabriel, Camille had received an anonymous email. It contained evidence that Gabriel had been using her accounts for money laundering. For the first time, Camille's blind faith in Gabriel began to waver. Everything was set. The night before the gala, Ava stood in front of her mirror, her reflection sharp and unyielding. This was it. The final hours before Gabriel Hunt lost everything. The grand hall of the hospital was bathed in golden light, the air thick with the hum of conversation and clinking glasses. Tonight, the annual fundraising gala was in full swing, a celebration of medical advancements, a showcase of brilliance, and most importantly, a night dedicated to honoring Dr. Gabriel Hunt. Dressed in an impeccable charcoal gray tuxedo, Gabriel stood at the edge of the stage, basking in the admiration of his peers. The room was filled with the elite of the medical world, top doctors, investors, philanthropists, and hospital board members. Cameras flashed, journalists whispered into microphones, capturing the grandeur of the night. And front and center, Camille Monroe sat at the VIP table, her hand resting on her swollen belly. She radiated confidence, her emerald gown hugging her figure perfectly. She was exactly where she wanted to be, the woman by Gabriel's side, the future mother of his child, the one who had replaced Ava. But what neither of them knew was that tonight was not a celebration. It was an execution. Ava sat further back in the crowd, poised, silent, waiting. She had spent months planning for this night, orchestrating every move down to the second, and now the trap was about to spring shut. The applause quieted as Gabriel took the stage, gripping the microphone with the same arrogance Ava had once admired, the confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gabriel began, his voice warm and commanding, "tonight we gather not just to celebrate but to push forward. The future of oncology is here, and I am honored to stand before you leading this charge." The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, nodding in admiration. Ava remained motionless, her heart pounding not with nerves but with the anticipation of what came next. The moment had arrived. She stood, and the room went silent. The sound of her heels clicking against the polished marble floor echoed in the stillness. Gabriel's smile faltered for the first time. "Ava," he said, masking his confusion behind a smirk, "this isn't really your moment, is it?" Ava walked up to the stage, reaching for the second microphone. "I disagree," she said calmly. "In fact, I think this is exactly my moment." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Eyes darted between Ava and Gabriel. Camille stiffened in her chair, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening around her champagne flute. Ava turned to the audience, her voice unwavering. "Before we continue applauding Dr. Hunt's so-called groundbreaking work, there's something you all deserve to see." The giant projector screen behind them flickered to life. A still image of Ethan Carter appeared, a young boy, 14 years old, smiling in his hospital bed. Then a video clip from hospital surveillance footage, Gabriel entering Ethan's room late at night. Less than 12 hours later, Ethan was dead. The next image, a string of other patients, all deceased under Gabriel's care. The murmurs turned into gasps of horror. Ava's voice cut through the chaos. Ethan Carter was one of many, a patient who should have lived, but Dr. Hunt had other plans. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "This is absurd," he said, forcing a laugh. "You're digging up old cases? Medical complications happen, Ava. You, of all people, should know that." Ava wasn't finished. "You're right, Gabriel," Ava said, her tone cool. "Medical complications happen, but money laundering, that's not a complication, it's a crime." The screen changed. Bank statements flooded the projector. Insurance payouts withdrawn within 24 hours of each patient's death. Large deposits funneled into an offshore account under Gabriel's name. And financial transactions traced back to one more person, Camille Monroe. The blood drained from Camille's face. "Gabriel," she whispered, turning to him. "What is this?" Gabriel gritted his teeth. But before he could spin another lie, Ava delivered the final blow. She reached into her clutch, pulled out a small recording device, and pressed play. Gabriel's own voice filled the hall. "Not everyone is strong enough to survive, Ava. Sometimes nature just needs a little help." Gasps. A chair scraped loudly as someone stood up. "Did he just— Oh my God!" A hospital board member clutched his chest, looking physically ill. "This is insane," Gabriel snapped, stepping forward. "None of this proves anything." Ava stared at him, unwavering. "You're right, Gabriel, but they do." She gestured to the back of the room. And then, FBI agents flooded in. Agent Callahan stepped forward, holding up a federal arrest warrant. "Dr. Gabriel Hunt, you are under arrest for medical fraud, insurance fraud, and multiple counts of first-degree murder." Gabriel took a step back, then another. Then he ran. A mad dash toward the exit, shoving chairs, nearly knocking over a woman in his desperation. But he didn't get far. The FBI tackled him within seconds, slamming him to the ground. Handcuffs clicked shut, And just like that, the mighty Gabriel Hunt was no more. Camille, still frozen in place, could only stare as her entire world crumbled before her eyes. Then another FBI agent approached her. "Miss Monroe, we have reason to believe your accounts were used to launder stolen funds. We need you to come with us." Camille's body shook. "No," she whispered. No, I didn't know." But no one cared. Ava turned away as Camille's knees buckled, her tears meaningless now. The same woman who had once *** laughed at Ava in a restaurant, flaunting her affair, flaunting her pregnancy, now looked like a shattered doll. Ava felt nothing. Outside the hospital, the night air felt lighter. Behind her, Gabriel was shoved into a black SUV, his legacy reduced to nothing. Camille, still crying, was escorted into a separate vehicle. And Ava? She inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling her lungs. For the first time in a long time, she could finally breathe. The world watched. News headlines screamed Gabriel Hunt's name, his face plastered across every major network. His arrest had sent shockwaves through the medical community, and now, as he stood trial for murder, fraud, and malpractice, the world held its breath. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, victims' families, medical professionals, and even former colleagues filled the benches. The tension was suffocating. Gabriel entered in an orange prison jumpsuit, a stark contrast to the powerful, untouchable doctor he once was. His face was gaunt, his once proud posture now slightly hunched. The arrogance was still there, but it was cracked. Sitting a few rows away, Camille Monroe looked like a ghost of her former self. Her designer clothes couldn't hide the fear in her eyes, the way her fingers twisted together in her lap. She was no longer the confident woman who had stolen Ava's husband. Now she was another pawn in Gabriel's downfall. And then there was Ava. Dressed in a sleek, dark blue suit, she sat poised, collected. She was no longer the betrayed wife. She was the woman who had brought a monster to justice. When the judge entered, the room fell into an eerie silence. The trial had begun. Ava walked to the witness stand with steady steps. She met Gabriel's cold, hate-filled stare, but felt nothing. No fear, no pain, only resolve. The prosecutor stood and addressed her. "Dr. Lancaster, you were once married to the defendant. Can you tell us when you first began to suspect that something was wrong?" Ava took a deep breath and began. She spoke of the late nights, the distance, the infidelity. She described the first time she questioned his work, the patients who should have lived but mysteriously died under his care. Then she revealed the financial trail, how the insurance money was funneled into offshore accounts. The prosecutor clicked a remote and the courtroom screen lit up. A recording played, Gabriel's own voice caught on tape. "Not everyone is strong enough to survive, Ava. Sometimes nature just needs a little help." A shudder went through the crowd. Gabriel sat stiffly, his hands clenched into fists. Ava kept her gaze on him. "I spent years loving a man I didn't truly know," she said, her voice steady. "But I know him now. I know exactly what he is." Her testimony was devastating. The evidence was damning. Gabriel had no way out. Camille Monroe was called to the stand. She hesitated, her eyes darting toward Gabriel, searching for something. Reassurance, perhaps. But Gabriel didn't look at her. For the first time, Camille realized she was completely alone. She swallowed hard, then faced the prosecutor. "Miss Monroe, you were in a relationship with the defendant. Did you ever witness any illegal activity?" Her lips trembled. I didn't know he was killing people. But you knew about the money." A beat of silence. Then Camille broke. "Yes." Her voice cracked. "I knew about the money. He used my accounts. He told me it was for research, that we were building something together." Tears slipped down her face. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I believed him." Gabriel's head snapped toward her. "You little traitor." "Mr. Hunt!" the judge barked. Gabriel seethed. For the first time, true rage flared in his eyes. Camille refused to meet his glare. She had chosen survival. A hush fell over the room as Lisa Carter, Ethan's mother, stood up from the gallery. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her voice was steel. "Gabriel Hunt, you stole my son from me. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Another family stood up. "You took my husband. You killed my sister." One by one they rose, their voices overlapping, a symphony of grief and fury. Gabriel shifted in his seat, his confident mask crumbling. For the first time he looked afraid. The jury had deliberated for hours, but when they returned, the answer was clear. The judge's voice was calm, yet final. "In the case of the state versus Gabriel Hunt, the jury finds the defendant guilty on all counts." A beat of silence. Then the gavel slammed down. "The defendant is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole." The courtroom exploded into noise. Gasps, cheers, tears. Gabriel shot up, fighting against the guards. "Ava!" he bellowed, his face twisted in rage. "You will regret this. You think this is over? It's not over." The guards forced him down, cuffing his wrists. He thrashed, but it was over. For good. Camille Monroe was spared prison time, but her life was destroyed in a different way. Her medical license was revoked. Her name was tarnished beyond repair. No hospital would ever hire her again. She was branded as the woman who helped a murderer. As she left the courtroom, reporters swarmed her, shoving microphones in her face. "Miss Monroe, do you have anything to say about Dr. Hunt? Did you ever love him? Do you feel guilty?" She kept walking. Her heels clicked against the pavement, each step carrying her away from the wreckage of her life. She had lost everything, and she knew it. Outside the courthouse, Ava stood still, breathing in the cold, crisp air. The storm was over. The monster was caged. The woman who had tried to take everything from her was now nothing. Justice had been served. A reporter approached her. "Dr. Lancaster, any final words about today's verdict?" Ava turned, looking straight into the camera. "Monsters don't win forever." She walked away, finally free. The air inside the courtroom was heavy, almost suffocating. The silence stretched as the judge lifted the verdict in his hands, eyes scanning the paper before speaking the words that would seal Gabriel Hunt's fate. "The court finds the defendant, Gabriel Hunt, guilty of first-degree murder, insurance fraud, and medical malpractice. He is hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole." A single breath passed before the room erupted. Lisa Carter let out a cry, clutching her chest as she sobbed. The weight of years of grief finally released. Other families joined her, their voices rising, mourning their lost loved ones, celebrating long-awaited justice. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing the moment Gabriel Hunt, the once revered doctor, stood motionless in his seat. His face was pale, drained of any remaining arrogance. Then in a sudden outburst, he lunged forward, his body jerking as rage consumed him. "No! This is a lie!" His voice was hoarse, desperate, filled with unfiltered fury. He thrashed as the guards moved in, locking his arms in iron cuffs. His eyes, bloodshot and wild, landed on Ava. "You did this to me," he spat, his voice venomous. "You think you've won? I will make you pay." But Ava didn't even flinch. She simply tilted her head, eyes cold as steel. "No, Gabriel," she said, her voice even. "You did this to yourself." The guards tightened their grip, dragging him back. His screams echoed in the courtroom, growing fainter as he was pulled away. Outside, the crowd exploded in cheers. The verdict had been broadcasted live. Millions of people watched as Gabriel Hunt fell from grace, his legacy reduced to nothing but shame. Camille Monroe stood outside the courthouse, her hands clenched into fists. She had managed to escape prison time, but her punishment was a different kind of hell. The revocation of her medical license had been swift, her once bright career reduced to dust. No hospital would touch her. No company would hire her. The woman who had once been the shining jewel of the hospital was now nothing more than a disgraced ex-mistress. The whispers followed her wherever she went. She thought she could be the next Mrs. Hunt. Look at her now. Used, discarded, and thrown away just like his patients. The words stung more than she cared to admit. She had sacrificed everything for Gabriel. Her reputation, her dignity, her future. And what did she get in return? Humiliation, a ruined life, a truth she could never escape. As she pushed past reporters, someone called out, "Camille, do you regret choosing Gabriel over Ava?" She froze. Then without a word she walked away, heels clicking against the pavement. She had nothing left to say. Ava stepped outside, inhaling deeply as the crisp autumn air wrapped around her. She looked up at the courthouse steps, her chest rising and falling. It was done. The monster was caged. The woman who tried to take everything from her was reduced to nothing. But this wasn't just about her victory. It was about every patient who never got justice, every life stolen, every family torn apart. And now they had closure. As she turned to leave, a reporter pushed forward. "Dr. Lancaster, now that Gabriel Hunt has been convicted, what's next for you?" Ava paused, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. "Something bigger." Then she walked away. Ava sat in her office, staring at the email on her screen. It was an invitation, one that could change everything. "Dr. Lancaster, we would be honored if you would join us in the fight against corruption in the medical field. Your courage in exposing Gabriel Hunt has opened a door that many have feared to walk through. With your expertise, we can bring real change." She leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. For months her goal had been simple: destroy Gabriel, expose him, get justice. Now that it was done, she found herself at a crossroads. There was a knock at the door. "Dr. Lancaster?" The voice belonged to Callahan. He stepped inside, his usual no-nonsense demeanor softened. "I figured you'd get that email." She exhaled, rubbing her temples. "And what do you think? Should I do it?" Callahan sat across from her, resting his hands on the desk. "I've seen plenty of men like Gabriel. He's just one of many who think they can play God with people's lives. But you did something about it. You can't stop now, Ava. If you do, there will be another Gabriel Hunt, and another and another." She looked away, conflicted. "I didn't do this to be a hero. I just wanted justice." "And you got it," Callahan said. "But the fight isn't over." Ava stared at him for a long moment before glancing back at her screen. The cursor blinked over the words, "Accept invitation." She clicked it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Ava found herself sitting in high-level meetings, speaking with government officials, hospital executives, and watchdog organizations about medical fraud and unethical practices. Her name was everywhere. News articles, TV interviews, headlines that called her the doctor who brought down a monster. She hated the spotlight, but if it helped the cause, she endured it. One day she was invited to Washington, D.C., a meeting with the Secretary of Health. "Dr. Lancaster, we're considering a new oversight committee to monitor hospital practices," the woman said, tapping a file in front of her. "We need people who understand both the medical and ethical sides of the industry, people like you." Ava hesitated. "I'm a surgeon, not a policymaker." The secretary smiled. "Then be a surgeon who fixes more than just hearts. Be the one who fixes the system." Weeks turned into months. Ava spent her days reviewing medical policies, speaking at conferences and fighting to create safeguards that would prevent another Gabriel Hunt from ever exploiting the system again. She received letters from families, parents who lost children, patients who had nearly been victims of corrupt doctors. They thanked her, but the most unexpected letter came from Lisa Carter, Ethan's mother. "Dr. Lancaster," it read, "thank you. Because of you, my son's name will not be forgotten. Because of you, people like him might have a chance in the future. I don't know what your next steps are, but whatever they are, I hope you never stop fighting for those who can't fight for themselves." Ava folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. No, she would never stop fighting. This was just the beginning. The air in the studio was charged with anticipation. Ava sat under the bright studio lights, her face calm yet resolute as she faced the cameras broadcasting live to millions across the country. This wasn't just another interview. This was a defining moment. The host, a renowned journalist, leaned forward, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. "Dr. Lancaster, the world has followed your journey. You brought down one of the most powerful doctors in the country. How does it feel to have exposed Gabriel Hunt?" Ava met the woman's gaze, her voice firm but devoid of triumph. This was never about taking down a single man. It was about justice, about making sure no other family has to go through what the Carters did, or what so many others suffered in silence. The screen behind them changed. displaying a picture of Ethan Carter. The audience held their breath as Lisa Carter, Ethan's mother, stepped onto the stage. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she approached Ava, wrapping her arms around her tightly. "Thank you," Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "If it weren't for you, my son's story would have been buried forever." Ava swallowed, her throat tight, but she held Lisa just as firmly. "He deserved justice," she murmured. The host gave the two women a moment before turning back to the camera. "Dr. Lancaster, because of your bravery, major reforms are already being implemented in the medical industry. Can you tell us about them?" Ava took a deep breath, regaining her composure. For too long, the healthcare system allowed men like Gabriel to operate unchecked. That changes now. Hospitals will be required to disclose financial transactions tied to patient treatments, ensuring transparency. Doctors prescribing experimental drugs will be monitored more strictly, and a federal medical ethics board is being established to investigate suspicious deaths before more lives are lost. The host leaned in. "And you've been asked to serve on this board, correct?" Ava gave a small nod. "Yes, I will be working with lawmakers, patient advocacy groups, and medical professionals to create a system where safety and ethics come first. This isn't just about holding Gabriel accountable, it's about preventing the next Gabriel before it's too late." Applause erupted from the audience. Ava hadn't just won a personal battle, she had ignited a movement. The next morning, headlines dominated every major news outlet. Dr. Ava Lancaster, the woman who brought justice and changed medicine forever. Camille Monroe sat in a dimly lit apartment, her gaze fixed on the flickering television screen. Ava's face was everywhere. She was being hailed as a hero, a reformer. Meanwhile, Camille had become nothing more than a footnote in a national scandal. Her medical license had been revoked. Every hospital and clinic refused to hire her. Once she had been a rising star in the medical world, now she was unemployable, disgraced, forgotten. Her phone had stopped ringing. Former friends and colleagues had distanced themselves. Even those who once admired her now whispered behind her back, calling her naive, reckless. The final blow came when an email popped up on her laptop. Notice of foreclosure. The penthouse she and Gabriel had once shared, the same one where she had smugly thought she had won, was being seized by the bank. Camille let out a bitter laugh. She had spent years chasing power, only to be left with nothing. She packed a single suitcase, stepping out into the cold night air. No one knew where she was going. No one cared. And for the first time in her life, Camille Monroe was truly alone. Ava walked out of the studio, inhaling deeply as the cool evening air hit her skin. The battle was over, the war had been won. Justice had prevailed, not just for her, but for everyone who had suffered at Gabriel's hands. She had once been the woman standing in the shadows, cast aside and betrayed. Not anymore. She was Ava Lancaster, and she had taken back her life. The salty breeze brushed against Ava's skin as she stood on the wooden deck of her new home, gazing out at the endless stretch of ocean before her. The rhythmic crash of the waves against the shore was a stark contrast to the chaos she had left behind. It was quiet here, peaceful in a way she hadn't experienced in years. After everything, after the battle, the courtroom, and the relentless media storm, Ava had made a decision. She had given years of her life to fighting, to uncovering the truth, to bringing Gabriel to justice. But now, it was time to step away from the past and build something new. She left the city and the hospital where she had once walked the halls as Dr. Ava Lancaster, the renowned cardiothoracic surgeon. Instead, she settled in a small coastal town where the only sound that greeted her in the mornings was the call of the seagulls and the laughter of children playing on the beach. Ava had opened a small clinic, a place where she treated children whose families couldn't afford medical care. Here she wasn't fighting corruption or testifying in courtrooms. She wasn't standing on a stage exposing the sins of powerful men. She was simply a doctor again, healing those who needed her the most. Her days were filled with work that mattered, not in grand history-making ways, but in the small, quiet moments that truly made a difference. A little boy with asthma who could now run without gasping for breath. A girl whose broken arm was set without her parents drowning in medical debt. These were the victories she cherished now. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Ava found herself walking along the shore, feeling the sand warm beneath her bare feet. She inhaled deeply, letting the scent of salt and freedom fill her lungs. For so long she had carried the weight of betrayal, of anger, of the need for justice. But standing there with the waves lapping gently at her feet, she realized something. She was free. Not just from Gabriel, not just from the corruption that had once threatened to swallow her whole, but from the past itself. She had won, but more importantly, she had survived. Ava smiled, a real unburdened smile. She had fought her battle. She had reclaimed her life, and now she was finally truly living. Life has a way of testing us, breaking us, and then shaping us into something stronger than before. Pain is inevitable, but it is in our choices, how we rise, how we rebuild, that our true strength is revealed. Justice may not always come swiftly, and truth often walks a difficult road, but in the end, light will always find a way to pierce through the darkness. Sometimes, the greatest victory is not in defeating others, but in reclaiming ourselves. In learning that peace is not found in the past, but in the present moment, in the quiet certainty that we have fought, endured, and emerged whole. What are your thoughts on this journey? Share your reflections in the comments below. And if you'd like to experience more stories like this, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Your support means the world. Let's continue this journey together.